Hello, college football fans. I'm Alex Vendetti here with my partners Alex Samuelson and cornerback for the Junior Jays, Cedric Smith. Today we're here to talk about one of the greatest rivalries in college football, Nebraska versus Oklahoma. As a Michigan fan, what does the Nebraska versus Oklahoma rivalry mean to college football?
It means a lot. It has great tradition, and the rivalry will be missed. It was always an interesting game, and you never knew who was going to come on top.
Why is the Nebraska-Oklahoma game such a good game?
Because it's always good competition
Every time?
every time.
Nebraska versus Oklahoma rivalry is one of the greatest rivalries in all of college football. Nebraska and Oklahoma are two of the greatest teams to ever play, and when the two would meet at the end of the season, they would put up a show greater than no other. Whenever they would play, the winner would likely clinch the Big 8 title, a trip to the Rose Bowl, and even a national championship. The two teams started to play each other in 1912, and they have played a total of 96 games, with Oklahoma winning the majority of them. This great rivalry unfortunately went dormant after Nebraska moved from the Big 12 to the Big 10 in 2011. This rivalry has featured many of the greatest college football players to ever play, including Johnny Rodgers, Tommy Frazier, Ndamukong Suh, Mike Rozier, Billy Sims, Adrian Peterson, Sam Bradford, and Brian Bosworth. It has also included two of the greatest coaches to ever coach college football, Tom Osborne and Barry Switzer.
Oklahoma has many rivals. The Red River Rivalry, or Oklahoma versus Texas, the Bedlam Series, or OU versus Oklahoma State, but the biggest rivalry the Sooners have is definitely Nebraska versus Oklahoma. They have played many wonderful games. As an Oklahoma fan, I looked forward to when Sooners would play the Huskers. For me, when the Sooners won, it would be bragging rights over my friends who were all Nebraska fans. For other Oklahoma fans, the game means tradition, history, and excellence.
Hi, I'm Barry Switzer, former head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. It's hard to believe I've been gone 20 years. I miss this great rivalry. In my era, Tom's era, it was the greatest rivalry in college football, and I miss it.
Game day at Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium is one of the greatest sights in all of college football. It has been said by many that the loudest Norman has ever been is when the Sooners take on the Huskers. This rivalry meant so much for the fans because the winner would usually win the conference championship and a shot at the national championship. Many families, whether Husker or Sooners fans, will always call the rivalry the greatest rivalry of all time.
As a Husker fan, the Nebraska-Oklahoma rivalry is very important to me. I wasn't alive when they would play every year, but whenever the two would play, my eyes would be glued to the TV. Whenever I would watch, I would think of the tradition the rivalry has and the greatness of each team. These factors would get me even more excited to watch this game. I went to the last regular season Husker versus Sooner game, and it was the craziest game I've ever seen at Memorial Stadium. Husker fans wanted to end the series the right way, with the home win. When the Huskers ended up winning, there were 70,000 fans walking out of the stadium with the biggest smiles on their faces. I wish I would have been alive to see the Huskers dominate the Sooners during the Tom Osborne era in the 1990s, but I hear all the great stories from my family members who vividly remember the Husker dominance. What is your fondest memory of a Nebraska versus Oklahoma game?
The game, I think it was in 2007 when we won 13-10. The stadium was really loud and it was very energetic and it was just a fun place to be.
Nebraska and Oklahoma have played many memorable games, but the most famous game was probably in 1972, when the number 1 Nebraska Cornhuskers took a trip to Norman, Oklahoma to play the number 2 Oklahoma Sooners. The winner of the game would clinch the Big 8 title, a trip to the Rose Bowl, and a shot at the national championship. This game became so popular it was coined Game of the Century. Nebraska and Oklahoma were both undefeated, and Nebraska was looking to win back-to-back national championships. With the help of Johnny Rodgers, Larry Jacobson, Rich Glover, and quarterback Jerry Tagge, Nebraska was trying to make their dream of being back-to-back national champs a reality. But All-American quarterback Jack Mildren of Oklahoma was not about to let that happen. The game was played on Thanksgiving Day in Norman. A total of 55 million people watched the game on TV, which was then a record. The game went back and forth. The first touchdown came from Johnny Rodgers with one of the greatest punt returns in college football history.
Rodgers deep for Nebraska. Here's Wiley's kick. It's high. It holds up there. Rodgers takes the ball at the 30. He's hit and got away. Back upfield to the 35, to the 40. He's to the 45. He's to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, to the 20, to the 10. He's all the way home. Holy moly. Man, woman, and child did that. Put him in the aisle. Johnny the Jet Rodgers just tore them loose from their shoes.
At one point in the first half, Nebraska led 14-3, but before the half would end, Oklahoma, relying on Jack Mildren, would grab the 17-14 lead. This was the first time all season that Nebraska was trailing in a game. Nebraska would rely on their power running game to take the lead back 28-17 heading into the fourth quarter. But Heisman hopeful Mildren led the Sooners to a comeback, and they ended up leading 31-28 with only 7:05 left to play. Nebraska had little time to come back. But Husker quarterback Tagge threw a great pass to Rodgers, and Rodgers broke a couple of tackles and made it to the 15-yard line. Nebraska would end up scoring on this drive, making the score 35-31. Oklahoma would get one more chance. The Blackshirts made sure that Oklahoma would not win. They sacked Mildren twice on 3rd and 4th down. Nebraska would not only go on to win that game, but the national championship as well. They played Auburn in the Orange Bowl and beat them, 38-6. Oklahoma would play Auburn in the Sugar Bowl that year and win 40-22. Despite the defeat in the game, Oklahoma's program was relaunched by it, and it would make them national championship contenders throughout the 70s and 80s. This game had so much on the line. It's what made it the game of the century. Now guys, who do you think is the better team in this rivalry?
Oklahoma.
Nebraska.
What?
It's Nebraska.
No, it's Oklahoma.
Why is it Oklahoma?
Why isn't it Oklahoma? Why do you think it's Nebraska?
Well, I think you look at the 80s and the 90s and you look how dominant the Huskers were. Better teams. In 1995, Nebraska probably had the best team in college football. Nebraska has better facilities, probably more money, bigger stands than Oklahoma. And Nebraska's much nicer than Oklahoma.
Well, you know, Venditti, it's kind of funny considering that you think that...
Wait, I got a question. Where do you live again?
I live in Nebraska.
So why do you live in Nebraska?
Because this is where
It's
my
'cause it's
parents
better.
were
It's
born.
'cause it's better.
No, it's not. It's not because it's better. My grandparents and my aunt are both from Oklahoma. So, of course, I'm going to probably be either a Nebraska fan or an Oklahoma fan. Oklahoma is probably one of the best teams that I've ever seen in college football history. I mean, if you just look at it from facts, Oklahoma and Nebraska have played for a total of 86 times. And for the all-time series, Oklahoma leads 45-38 with 3 ties. The largest victory ever that happened between Nebraska and Oklahoma was Nebraska.
Which means
I'll give
they're
you
better.
that,
Which means they're
which
better.
was 69-7. But then if you look at it, in American college football, Oklahoma had the largest winning streak and still has to this very day with 47 consecutive games. What has Nebraska done? What is Nebraska's longest streak? Can you please tell me that right now?
The longest streak is...
How many Heisman players does Nebraska have?
I think Nebraska has a more traditional program, though. They're up there with Notre Dame and Michigan with
Oh,
most
stop.
wins. The sellout record for Nebraska is just ridiculous.
Oh my goodness. So when Nebraska has 7 national championships and 44 conference championships and 5 Heisman Trophy winners, maybe you can come talk to me with some facts.
Most of those wins that you're talking about are coming from times where I don't think college football was as big as it is now. I mean, I think when you look at the 80s and the 90s and even like the 70s, it was much bigger than the 50s where Oklahoma had that giant streak.
Okay, think about the last meeting that Oklahoma and Nebraska had was December 4th, 2010, and the score was 23-20. Nebraska obviously should have won that game, but Oklahoma came back and stunned everybody. How does that happen?
Nebraska,
maybe because Oklahoma had more heart and they came out fighting and they pushed to be the best team that they wanted to be.
Well, Nebraska won the last regular season meeting 10-3. So if that tells you anything.
Oh yeah, regular season, but when it really came down to a wire, when it really mattered, Oklahoma came out victorious.
Nebraska still won.
Okay.
Before that.
Oh yeah, and that's why Oklahoma's still leading 45-38.
I think Nebraska has the better fan base too.
Get out of here.
Especially with the number of people we get per game, the attendance record. More fans probably will attract more recruits here in the future.
Yeah, and that's probably why you're getting no recruits right now. That's probably why you're like, what? Nebraska's won like 1 or 2 games so far.
I will
just
admit.
saying.
I will admit right now, if Oklahoma and Nebraska played, Oklahoma would win. But that's because
I will admit 10 years ago, if Oklahoma and Nebraska played, Oklahoma would still win.
Well, they did. But if we want to go 20 years ago, Nebraska won.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we can go 20 years ago. Nebraska won, and then what happened the next year? Oklahoma probably won.
No, they didn't. Not 20 years ago.
Okay, tell me.
1996, Nebraska won that one.
Okay,
Good try, though.
All right. And
Good try.
you know what's funny? I'll give you game of the century.
That's a big game. Big games count, and when the big games count, Nebraska wins, except for the last one.
What do you think, Alex?
Personally, I think that neither team would be the powerhouse they are today without the other. They feed off of each other. That is why they are 2 of the greatest college football teams of all time. The 2 teams should not be compared by which team is better than the other, because Nebraska and Oklahoma would not be the same franchises they are today without the other.
And they were certainly the standard by which we had to measure ourselves. And so many times people thought they were our enemy. But I never looked at them that way. I always felt that in a way they were our friend because they made us better.
Since Nebraska's moved to the Big Ten, Nebraska and Oklahoma have not gotten the chance to play each other. College football wouldn't be the same without this rivalry. Nebraska and Oklahoma wanted to rekindle the fire, so they agreed on playing in 2021 and 2022. We are all very excited to see those 2 games. It will give the world the chance to see the greatest rivalry in all of college football.